President of the European Central Bank Christine Lagarde has warned of the potential effects of new US trade policies.
Finland is accelerating preparation for all potential conflicts, including nuclear, hybrid war, or even a full-scale invasion.
Ireland calls Israel's decision to close its Dublin embassy regrettable, but says it won't change its stance on the war in Gaza.
US President-elect Donald Trump's potential trade policies could negatively impact the EU economy. Speaking at a press conference in Vilnius on Monday, President of the European Central Bank Christine Lagarde said that it will continue to cut interest rates, but is worried about economic growth. As inflation continues to ease towards its 2% target, Lagarde explained that there are both upside and downside risks.
A downside risk might be some of the geopolitical developments, including, for instance, the change of the American policies in relation to trade.
These tensions could result in higher energy prices and freight costs. US President-elect Donald Trump campaigned on a pledge to impose tariff of 10 to 20% on all imports.
Russian President Vladimir Putin accused NATO nations of pushing Russia into its red lines. In his annual meeting with defense officials, the Russian president implied the figurative point of no return may be reached by escalating the conflict in Ukraine.
США продолжают накачивать фактически нелегитимный правящий режим в Киеве оружием и деньгами. Отправляют наемников и военных советников и тем самым поощряют дальнейшую эскалацию конфликта. Доводят нас до красной черты, через которую мы отступать уже не можем. Начинаем отвечать, тут же пугают свое население, тогда еще в давние времена советской, сейчас российской угрозы.
Putin also voiced his concerns over the developments made by the United States regarding medium and shorter range missiles. He added that if the US were to cross this line, Moscow would lift its voluntary restrictions. The Russian president also applauded Russian forces for capturing 189 settlements this past year.
Finland is accelerating preparation for all potential conflicts, nuclear, hybrid war or even a full-scale invasion. It has a 1,300-kilometre border with Russia, although this has been closed for over a year after Russia sent over 1,000 migrants there to destabilise the country. Since then, Finland has been dealing with other warfare, such as the tampering of undersea cables, disinformation and the presence of so-called Russian shadow oil fleets which illegally transport Russian oil, contravening Western sanctions.
The Finnish Border Guard has been always an organization, a readiness organization, which has built its capabilities to operate in a situation like today. But of course, it is also true that, for example, the phenomenon of shadow fleet, phenomenon of GPS disturbance, and illegal immigration in the eastern borders are something that we have seen only in last years. We have seen, let's say, cable cuts, cable breakdown points, which are under criminal investigation. As I mentioned before, we also see a threat for an environmental accident in the Gulf of Finland, and one part of this is GPS disturbance, which can be seen especially in the eastern parts of Gulf of Finland.
Conscripts, which have long been part of Finland's overall security policy, are now training with the possibility that they could be defending the whole of Europe since the country joined NATO.
Finland has been preparing for any war for several decades. The invasion by Russia in 1939 is something that Finns are constantly reminded of. And the key principle of this comprehensive security and defence strategy is deterrence. To deter any potential invader, in particular Russia, that this country is prepared, its society as a whole and military are well trained.
It's not aimed only towards Finland or the neighboring countries, but Russia is trying to destabilize the whole of Europe. So the whole Europe has to take this hybrid war seriously. And because Russia cannot pressure us by threatening in the way of conventional war, because we are all members of NATO. The hybrid war is the mean they use to threaten us.
Helsinki says it's now open to new EU defence spending, including defence bonds. The government says investing in European security fits in with the country's overall security strategy. Shona Murray, Euronews, Helsinki.
Western diplomats are beginning to take steps to ease relations with Syria as it starts its political transition. On Monday, EU Foreign Chief Kaja Kallas announced that the EU will send a diplomat to Damascus to establish contact with the new Syrian leaders.
So we will also discuss today in the Foreign Affairs Council how we engage with the new leadership of Syria and on what level we engage with the new leadership. And of course, what more steps are we willing to take if we see that Syria goes to the right direction.
Her comments come as the UN Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, met with rebel leader Ahmed al-Shara in Damascus. He stressed the need for increased humanitarian assistance to Syria and an end to sanctions.
And then, of course, it's the whole question about economic recovery. We need to see that this is tricky. We will hopefully see a quick end to sanctions so that you can see really rallying around building up Syria yet.
UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy echoed Kallas in establishing diplomatic contact with al-Shara's HTS rebel group, although he added that the group is still considered a proscribed organization by the UK. Both Lammy and Kallas called for the need for an inclusive government in Syria.
Ireland's Prime Minister Simon Harris has called Israel's decision to close its embassy in Dublin deeply regrettable. But he also said his government wouldn't change its position on how the war in Gaza is being fought. Israel announced on Sunday it would close its mission in the Irish capital because of what officials called extreme anti-Israel policies.
I will push back very strongly against any attempt by any country to misrepresent Ireland's position. Ireland is not anti-Israeli, but Ireland is absolutely anti the starvation of children, is absolutely anti-killing of civilians, and is absolutely pro-peace, pro-international law, and pro-human rights.
Meanwhile, Israeli forces have continued to pound Gaza's largely isolated north as the Palestinian death toll approaches 45,000. One airstrike hit the Khalil Aweda school in the town of Beit Hanun and killed at least 15 people, according to nearby Kamal Adwan Hospital, where casualties were taken. And in Gaza City, at least 17 people, including 6 women and 5 children, were killed in 3 airstrikes that hit houses sheltering displaced people. Israel's military said in a statement that it struck a terrorist cell in Gaza City and a terrorist meeting point in the Beit Hanun area. The war in Gaza began after Hamas stormed southern Israel on the 7th of October last year, killing 1,200 people and taking around 250 others hostage.
France's Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau arrived in Mamoudzou, the capital of the French overseas territory of Mayotte, after the island was shattered by its worst storm in nearly a century. He told rescue staff that all means would be mobilized to help people, including by ship and military aircraft.
Le problème, c'est que si ces efforts sont dispersés et s'il n'y a pas une conduite logistique, coordination extrêmement robuste, tout ça sera vain. Voilà, ça c'est le job du préfet, de ses équipes, de chacun d'entre vous, et donc vraiment je compte sur vous. La tâche est difficile, il va y avoir du découragement, parce qu'il va y avoir beaucoup de fatigue.
The official death toll stood at 14 on Monday, but authorities at Mayotte fear hundreds and possibly thousands of people have died in Cyclone Chido. Entire neighborhoods have been flattened and public infrastructure like the main airport and hospital have been badly damaged, further complicating the response.
South Korea's Constitutional Court has begun proceedings for the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. Last week, lawmakers voted to oust him after he imposed a short-lived martial law earlier in December, which had thrust the country into political chaos.
제1차 변론 준비기일을 12월 27일 금요일 오후 2시로 지정한다. 변론 준비기일에서 검찰, 경찰 등의 수사 기록을 조기에 확보한다.
Even though the court has 6 months to decide if Yoon should be removed from his position or to restore his powers, they are under pressure to decide quickly to bring an end to the country's political instability. Upholding Yoon's impeachment needs the support from at least 6 out of 9 judges. But the court currently only has 6 judges, so they will have to vote unanimously in favor. Roughly 5,000 Santas of different ages are running to raise money for Kosovo's annual charity marathon. This year they are supporting the hospital's pediatric branch for children. Meanwhile, in France, organizers were handing out the classic red and white hats and overcoats to thousands of Santas, as well as one Grinch. They all ran 10 kilometers in the annual fundraising run in southern Paris.
Le Grinch, c'est aussi l'esprit de Noël. Mais à la fin, l'histoire se termine bien. C'est un Grinch gentil quand même. C'est pas le Grinch méchant.
And in Hungary's Budapest, hundreds of runners braved the cold.
Megláttuk az első fotókat, úgy éreztük, hogy itt a helyünk, és végül is nem tévedtünk. Olyan nagy buli ez az egész, és olyan élményt ad nekünk is, és azt látjuk, hogy azoknak az embereknek is, akik.
The run is in its 21st year, with entry fees going to charities during the holiday season.